When I was probably about 13 or at most 14 years old, my dad had devolved into drinking heavily. My dad, at the final point, had his .45 caliber semi-automatic pistol. He was brandishing it in the kitchen.
Welcome to Rising Above Shadows of Abuse, a podcast where we unpack the layers of trauma, healing, and hope with those who've walked through the burning furnace and come out with wisdom. I'm your host, Grace Upper. Today's show, would you like to share bits from your early years that shaped the way you see the world today?
Well, no, there's one episode in particular that has come back to haunt me innumerable times in my dreams and even in my waking life. And that particular event happened, I believe, when I was probably about 13 or at most 14 years old. My dad had devolved into drinking heavily. And then we're talking about being intoxicated by about 10 or 11 a.m. in the morning. He would go down the cellar under the auspices of doing some work. He had his workshop down in the basement, unfinished basement, very dark and very scary place if the lights weren't on. In fact, that place, ricocheting, that's haunted me in my dreams, that cellar, because he would hide bottles of scotch or vodka or whatever he can get his hands on. Anyways, one Saturday late morning, my mother and father were fighting, as was often the case, and I don't know really what was underlying it, but I do know that my dad, at the final point, had his .45 caliber semi-automatic pistol. He was brandishing it in the kitchen, and he basically discharged it, shot it in the floor of the kitchen, and announced to the family, he says, "I'm going upstairs to kill myself." And we were essentially filled with terror and frozen. Oh my God. And here we are in the living room, and just watched this figure stumble by us. And when Dad was slowly making his way upstairs, because he was going to do it upstairs, as a unit, we just charged him and subdued him. And I successfully wrestled that gun out of his right hand. And it was the kind of thing that it happened. My mother wisely did call the police, who came, and they were, as I recall, very kind. They escorted my dad to the police car, and I found out later, I took him down to the police station. I don't believe they booked him or anything, but they kept him there for a bit, and then he wound up going to my maternal grandmother's house for a couple of days to, quote, dry out. And it was the kind of thing that we did not talk about. But one of my younger brothers had the wherewithal, and I thank God that he did, to confiscate all of my dad's firearms, which were down in the cellar. And he had an array of pistols and a 22 gauge rifle, and took the firearms and the ammunition and basically took it away from the premises, for which as the years have gone by, I am so proud of my brother for having the wisdom to be able to do that, because even though we were all in tremendous pain, he really acted responsibly. And to this day, I will build him up and say, "Job well done."
That must have been very scary, though, for the whole family.
Oh, I'm sure I cried myself to sleep that night. And we couldn't trust what was going to happen next. So you talk about being on pins and needles. It was kind of like I mean, I don't want to compare it to a MASH unit because there wasn't the same kind of limbs missing, people dying, but how chaotic it was and how very scary it was very real.
Be safe and be positive. And don't forget to check out our social media handles. Thank you. Bye for now.